Hello everyone, welcome back for another science video. Today we are going to be talking about food chains. New unit, no, that's a lie. We're still in the same unit. Miss Waite's a little sleepy. Sorry, y'all. We're still in the same unit. Just a new topic. Getting ahead of myself there. New unit next week though. So let's talk about food chains. What is a food chain? So food chains model the flow of energy from one level to the next when we're talking about organisms. So they're showing us how energy is flowing amongst those organisms. So when we're looking at food chains, they kind of move in levels. So here I'm going to draw 4 arrows because we're really going to be looking at 4 main levels. So we have level 1, level 2, level 3, and then level 4. So it shows the transformation of energy between these organisms. Now, we've talked about energy transformations in class before. This is a little bit different. So normally we see things where we have mechanical energy to maybe chemical energy to thermal energy. But the way that energy is being transferred in a food chain is moving from one organism to the next organism. So let's go ahead and look at how do things flow. We want to see how are things going to flow in the food chain, how are things moving from one level to the next. So these are some vocabulary words that we've seen before. So things in a food chain move from the autotrophs to the heterotrophs. Sorry, I had to write it kind of funny, guys. I started running out of room. Moves from autotrophs to heterotrophs. In case you forgot what those words mean, I'm going to jog your memory. So let me see. Autotrophs. Can you get it before I write it? How do they get their food? They make their own food. Go ahead and maybe think of an example. What do you think is a good example for an autotroph? Things that make their own food. And then heterotrophs. What are those? Think about it. Think about it. They get their energy where? From other organisms. Kudos to you if you got that before I even said it. So that's going to be things like humans. Did you get an example for autotrophs? And those are going to be things like plants. Awesome job if you already came up with an example in your head for that one. So I already briefly mentioned this, but we are going to be focusing on 4 main levels of the food chain. And honestly, there can be more, but we're going to keep it basic and we're going to keep it at those 4 main levels. So we have our producers. We have our primary consumers, which those are going to be our first level consumers. We have our secondary consumers. And then last but not least, we have our tertiary consumers. And this just means the third level. So primary is level 1, secondary is level 2, and tertiary is level 3 as far as consumers go. And then producers are at the very front. So let's go ahead and look at what those mean a little bit more in depth because I just kind of threw those words at you guys. We want to have definitions. We want to know what things mean. So producers are organisms that make their own food. And those are going to be things like plants that we talked about. They don't need to eat anything. They just get a little sunlight and they are good to go. That's all they need. All they need is a little bit of sunshine. So primary consumers are animals that only eat plants. So that's it. They only eat the producers. We call those herbivores. So herbivore just simply means that they only eat plants. Next, we have our secondary consumers, which eat the primary consumers, and they can also eat producers. So they're eating meat and they're eating plants. And we call those animals omnivores. So those are going to be things like humans are omnivores. Most primates are omnivores, but actually, fun fact, gorillas are vegetarians, so I guess you could say that they're herbivores. But yeah, when you think of an omnivore, think of things like humans, that we eat plants and animals. So those are our secondary consumers. Our tertiary consumers, which tertiary just means third, it's our third level of consumer. They eat the secondary consumers and they only eat meat. So think about, before I even write it down, what do we call organisms that only eat meat? Do you know? We haven't talked about it. They're called carnivores. So carnivores are organisms that only eat meat. So when you think about this, think about things like lions, eagles, owls, tigers, things that only eat meat. We have these four different steps that we literally, getting tongue tied here. So we have these four different steps, and I've just been calling them steps, but they actually have a formal scientific name. So what is each step going to be called? Well, each step is going to be called a trophic level. That's its formal scientific name. So the energy is moving through the trophic levels. Now here I'm just going to draw a more in-depth example of how energy is flowing through these trophic levels, and just a little bit more of a visual for what that looks like for you guys. So I'm drawing my arrows again, I'm putting my levels, and then I'm going to go ahead at the top and to label what each level represents. Oh, and also level 4 is going to be your predator and your carnivore. So it's not only a carnivore, but they're also a predator. So your level 1 is going to be your producer. That is going to be your plants, things that get energy from the sun. Your level 2 is going to be your primary consumer. That's your first level consumer, and they only eat plants. Your level 3 is going to be your secondary consumer, and they eat the primary consumer, and they're omnivores. And then level 4 is going to be the tertiary consumer, which they only eat meat. So for our L1, our level 1, our producer, we have some grass. And for our primary consumer, I think I'm going to go ahead and draw a ladybug. Our ladybug is going to eat our grass. That's our primary consumer. For our secondary consumer, let's pretend, I'm going to draw a snake. Let's pretend that it's a baby snake and it's really, really tiny, and the only thing that it can eat are ladybugs. But I was trying to think of something that eats meat. And yeah, so we'll say that our secondary consumer is our snake. It's going to eat our ladybug. And then our tertiary consumer is going to be an owl. Now, y'all don't laugh at my drawing skills. I can draw if I really try, but I was trying to make this quick for y'all so y'all would understand. You know, I labeled it owl so that you would know that it's an owl, because Miss Waits was struggling today. I wasn't on my A game. But anyways, our tertiary consumer is going to be our owl. The owl is what's going to eat the snake. So, the notes that I want to make about my food chain drawing. First off, the ladybug eats the grass. Let's remember that. So the ladybug is eating the grass. Next off, the snake eats the ladybug. And then after the snake eats the ladybug, the owl eats the snake. The energy from each organism is moving from one to the next. So it's going grass, ladybug, snake, owl. Everything is moving in a line. Always remember that. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next science video. Bye.